shut the door. Opera has become the first web browser to allow you to run your LLMs locally. That's right, on your computer, all through the browser, no code required. Like anything else with generative AI, the art of running LLMs locally went very quickly from something that was just cool and brainy to something that became useful but difficult to now something that is desirable and easy. But why would you want to run your LLMs locally? Well, the first thing that people latch onto is obviously privacy. Makes sense. If you're not using an LLM hosted by some company, then you can make sure that nobody's watching and nobody's listening. Yeah, sure. However, depending on the service that you're using, this may not be something that you need to worry about actually. Take Amazon Bedrock, for example. They state very clearly in their data protection policy that they do not use your data in any way, including to train the foundation models that you're using through the service. Even if you customize the models with your own data sets, it creates a private copy of the model for you, which is all yours, much like as if you were running locally. Having said that, of course, that means you have to read the terms and conditions. Like, what do you mean read? And keep up with the changes. So not having to do that could be good enough reason for some to run their LLMs locally. I will caution that if that is your only reason, it might not be worth it, because most likely you're going to end up with a less performant version of that LLM. And speaking of performance, the second reason why people consider running LLMs locally is to reduce latency. Makes sense. Something's running locally on your computer, surely it's faster, right? Well, not necessarily. When you use hosted LLMs, your bottleneck is network because you're using them through APIs. When you run them locally, your bottleneck is hardware. So you must keep in mind that these companies like OpenAI and cloud providers and Hugging Face, they all have this massive optimized infrastructure that your computer probably cannot match. So if your internet is all good, you may not actually notice many performance gains here. Memory requirements for running a model locally will largely depend on how many parameters that model has. I'll give a rule of thumb. You can actually multiply the number of parameters in a model by 4 bytes to arrive at a finger in the air value of how much memory it will take to run a model. So let's take an example, Llama 2 7B. So the clue is in the name, 7B, there are 7 billion parameters. So you can multiply 7 billion by 4 bytes, which is gonna equal, come on, do the math in your head, 20 gigabytes. Incidentally, did you know that you can actually type math in natural language in Google? Keep in mind though that this is just to get it going, because the larger the prompt you send, the more memory it takes to run that inference. So you gotta keep scalability in mind. And yes, we're talking VRAM here, GPUs. You could rely on CPUs, however, you're bound to have degraded performance or even run into CPU timeout errors. Having said that, if your intention is to run LLMs completely offline, unplugged, then running locally is what you need. Companies may not host an LLM that you want to use, such as, for example, an uncensored LLM. Uncensored. And there isn't just one, there are many. I wonder what people may use this for. Irrespectively of why you may want to run your LLMs locally, you gotta admit this is mind-blowing. It wasn't that long ago that we just got used to ChatGPT and it seemed like this huge futuristic technology, and now we can already run these things in our computers. Forget that, in our web browsers now. Gotta love tech. Bye-bye. So, if you have more about AI, ML, and FLM, you can actually multiply. I'll give you a finger in the air. I'll give you a finger.